Hey guys, Major Dodo here. Time for another Kingdom Death assembly guide. And today's miniature is the Pinup Dragon Sacrifice. Bit of a break from the Pinups of Death series we've been working on, but she's been sitting here, so I thought it'd be nice to have a little bit of a change of pace and do something a bit different. Alright, so as with all miniatures, this is the first time working with this model. I've looked at the sprue to try and get an idea of how it's going to go together, but this will be my first time assembling them. It does, like, it's a fantastic model. I'm really keen to put it together. It was in, this model was in Crystal Brush this year. It was one of the ones that a lot of people were putting photos about for. So obviously mine's not going to come out anywhere near as nice when I do it, but definitely keen to paint her. She's a gorgeous model. Quite a lot of parts, considering that it's just a 30mm pinup. So I've clipped out the back cloak, which will actually be one of the last pieces to attach, and will probably be left off as a sub-assembly since it does obscure access to all of the back areas. And from what I've seen of assembled versions of this model, it's not going to attach to any of the other pieces of cloak, so it should be fine to leave off. Apart from that, I've just clipped off both her legs, do a quick dry fit as it looks like they go together as one piece. You will notice this head face floating around. This came off earlier. It was on a very small, it was only attached via a very small piece of plastic here. I have included it in the sprue photo to your right, so you can see where it is. And I'll be adding annotations, circling out the parts as I pick them up. So just to be aware, if you do get this model yourself, that is one of the parts that may come off of its own accord. So don't panic, just be careful and hunt around. Alright, we're going to get the boobs out as well. Standard Kingdom Death detachable boobs. Except when I was looking at, now I believe it was this piece, it looks like part of her breast is there, but then I realized it was the shoulder. I had a moment of like even more confusion. I'm like, they've separated the breast into like 3 pieces now. It's madness, it's getting worse, but no, it was just the shoulder. So that looks like it's going to go in fine. I was going to say, do be careful when you do clip off this face, and I'll bring it up very carefully because there's a small piece that comes off the bottom that looks like a spare piece of sprue. This is not. It is actually designed, I'm going to sit this there so it doesn't move, so you can see. That little bit at the bottom is actually supposed to be there. If I get the focus right so you guys can see. So be careful when clipping. You want the piece to look like this. That will actually slot into a position at the top and keep it in place and form part of her necklace. So just a bit of a service announcement. I had to look several times, in fact, to make sure I was right and that it was actually part of the face, not to be removed. So obviously that's going to be something I think some people might make the mistake for. So we're going to get out the head. It looks like she has a, oh no, on the picture she doesn't have a front loincloth, but I'm guessing that's what this is. We'll have to see. Anyway, we'll look at the assembly here. So these will go together. This will then assemble in there. Again, quite a different style that I'm used to. A little bit different assembly, but one thing I've noticed is the mold lines on these pieces are a little bit thicker than normal. So then this one runs straight down the top, the front of the leg here. So you want to be very careful removing that, as obviously since it's the front of the model and it's right smack dab in the center of view, that's an area that you want to be as smooth and as perfect as possible. So I'm just going to scrape it with the blade, as I do. Very carefully, Working my way down, trying not to take too much because I don't want to flatten the surface. I just want to remove this mold line. If at any point the knife starts to drag along and score it, you want to stop straight away and either change blades or use a different part of the knife that is still sharper. Different parts of the blade wear at different speeds, because we all have, well, favorite areas on a blade that we will normally use. So you can get a little bit more life out, but at the end of the day, it's usually best to err on the side of caution, especially if you're painting this up as a display piece or as a gift or even as a commission. All right. Just going to run my finger across there. I want to make sure it feels smooth. And we still have this mold line continues down the top of the foot, which is now getting onto detailed territory, so you want to be extra careful because you do not want to, well, no one wants to have munted feet, not even a miniature. We'll just grab this little bit off the bottom of her shoes where we've separated it out. Apologies if my thumb's getting in the road. I am bracing it. It's very similar to when you are painting if you have shaky hands. Bracing your hands together like that aids in stability because there is another mold line going down the back as well. I'm going to grab that, smooth that down, and again just run the knife gently down the back, trying to get the mold line off the back of her anklets without damaging the detail. And that's kind of the tricky part when there's detail areas with a big mold line like this. Probably one of the worst ones I've seen in a while. I've been kind of spoiled. The pinups of Deathbox had very few mold lines and they were usually very soft. Required very little work, whereas these ones are very distinct and you just see them straight away. So there must have been a very slight, I wouldn't say mold slippage, since it doesn't look anything's completely out of whack, but it doesn't look like it was sealed as well as it could be. But the Pinup Dragon Sacrifice from memory is one of the, well, this was purchased as the naked version, which is to say it was just the sprue, no art cards or anything like that. So so it was probably from the first batch they did, where you would expect, you know, some teething problems, especially in a company as young in terms of the miniature world as Kingdom Death. It's having only been around for, well, less than a decade, I believe. Alright, I'm going to get my base brush and try and clean this up a bit, but we still got a little bit of mold line where the top of her stockings or leggings are, and we want to get rid of that, obviously. We're going to approach that a bit differently at a different angle since it's somewhat sharper. Alright. Make sure I get this as tight to there as I can. Same here, you want to get in as close as you can. It's often easy to miss the mold line right near a border like that, an edge like that, but it will be noticeable later. Check this side, yep. Again, quite a bad one. Now we're going to get the top of her thigh very carefully. You don't want to press down. You want your knife blade to do all the work. You don't want to be pressing down on it, adding any extra force, because that's just going to cause it to cut into the model. I know this is probably like, if you've watched previous videos, it's probably going to be like the 100th time you've heard me say that, but it's true. And when you're dealing with skin, you want to be as careful as possible and keep that skin as smooth as possible for when you start going back. Although in this case, if you're doing stockings, either colored or dark, you probably have a little bit more room to hide mistakes. But the top of the thigh, where I'm working at the moment, is not one of those areas. Although the crystal brush entry did a little bit different, instead of going traditional pink skin, he she, I believe it was a female artist, painted it as a actual dragonkin, dragon-related human, and had some scales free-handed on and had green skin, which was kind of interesting. Kind of looked like a draconic She-Hulk. Alright, so I'm going to run my thumbnail along that join. That's fine. Let's have a look here. Looks good. So now it's just the top of the foot. And this has all been for one piece, so that's definitely not giving this model marks in its favor. Here's the level of mold line cleanup that's been involved. Now it's hard to tell. It looks like I've gotten it. We'll see. If not, I may have to go in with some finishing files. So now we'll go to the other leg and do much the same thing. In much the same places, to be honest. It's the pretty much just the mirror image of the other leg. In fact, I think I may try and skip past this or cut this out in the final cut. Be up to you guys. But yeah, just being careful again, working my way around, cleaning up. Hopefully the other pieces aren't as bad. From what I saw, this is going to be the worst area of them all. These had the most distinct mold lines on them. But generally, if you've got bad mold lines in one spot, you're going to have them in most of the model, depending on how those parts were sitting on the sprue itself. But yeah, there's a couple of reasonably bad ones, but because the rest are quite small parts, your cleanup time isn't going to be anywhere near as long. Alright, so I'm just having awkward because I want to hold this as steadily as I can because you do not want your blade to jump along. You want a smooth scraping motion. So it's a bit hard to see with my thumb with the way it is, but hold it like that, you can see what I mean. You don't want to be jabbing down and scratching it when you put the knife to the model. Just want to gently be working up, getting rid of the mold line, leaving a nice, smooth, paintable surface. And again, have my brush here that I use to brush off excess flash and from the plastic shavings. Works a little bit better than just blowing on it. I get a little bit off the bottom of the shoes because these two shoes will be the anchor points. One of the typical closed foot poses that a lot of the pinups have. Alright, let's have a look at the back. So the back of the calf needs a bit more work. See, I've just done it then. I wasn't careful and I've scratched the back of her thigh there. So now I'm going to have to shave that a little bit just to smooth it off. That's why you want to be careful, take your time. And that helps avoid little mistakes like that. Alrighty, how good is front of her calves? Alright, I can still feel a mold line on her knee. Generally, if you can pick it with a fingernail or a thumbnail in this case, you're definitely going to be able to see it. So as I said, just want to run it over and double check. It's never too late to clean a mold line though, so it's better to clean, even if you've primed it and you see a mold line, it's better to clean it up than just start painting it and try and hide it, because you will see it, you will catch it. The paint will exacerbate that line even more. by the time you start sheeting and stuff, and it's just not going to look great. That's why the cleanup step with models, any model really, but especially these ones, is probably one of the most important. Alright, and then we just have the top of her thigh. Just gonna get this part done. Almost there. Probably going to be one of the most boring parts of this clip, so do feel free to skip ahead to the next assembly part. Though it does look like, I will point out there is a small dent here where the two legs will meet up by the looks of it. Yeah. So these two pieces don't meet up perfectly smooth. The back is not so bad. Alright, so I think I'm going to put the boob, won't make the mistake I made last time. I'll press the boobs in first. Doesn't look like there's a mold line, but we'll check. When I get this cut off though, cut mark, and dry fit it. Wow, that's quite a decent sized gap there. But it doesn't look like there's anything at the back, it just literally looks like... no, that's a bit better. There's going to be a slight gap. I'll bring the piece up and zoom in. So you can again fill that up with putty and such, but it will get hidden to a decent degree, I hope, by the arms. Alrighty. So we'll glue those in. I'm going to use the white adhesive, and I'll loosen up this while I'm at it, just in case. Actually, no, I've been making that mistake. We'll use the green one. Err on the side of caution. Completely unlike me. So just going to run this in. The other thing with this is you can be sparing, but if you put too little, it's not gonna set at all. If you put too much, it's gonna ooze out like crazy. So it can take a little bit to get used to. Because being with the extra thin, you can actually apply it very, very thinly. So the motion is you want to go down and then up in, hook it under and then press it in. And it should go in very tight, especially once you've added the adhesive. There we go. Now you will already guessed, I got ahead of myself and I forgot to clean the mold lines on this part. So I'm going to do those now while the breasts set into place. Obviously trying not to dislodge them, but... So then we have another mold line down the side of the torso. And we got another bit down there. Make sure we keep everything as clean, as smooth as possible. Get rid of any excess little bits like that. Alrighty, we're getting there. We want to get this one here, although I'm pretty sure that one's going to get completely hidden. That whole join will get hidden by the arm. But that said, if you don't clean it properly, the arm may not stick properly. Clean the top of the neck, or where the neck begins. Get rid of that mold line. This is, it's quite, like, there are quite a lot of mold lines. I didn't realize until I've looked at the sprue a few times just to kind of get a feel of it, but I didn't realize just how really bad it was until I picked it up to do the clip. Alrighty then. So, there it is, 2 legs and the torso ready to go together. So for the legs, I will use the white adhesive. I may actually bring the camera in a bit. Holy crap, that jumped in fast. Thank you, Logitech, for your irregular zooming in. It's like one point, no, you gotta click it heaps, and then in other times it's just instant. Alright, so I'm gonna get a little bit, and I'm gonna do a little bit here on this belt where they're gonna meet together. And a bit has come up from between the cracks. So a bit of tissue is all you need. Just quickly, and Bob's your uncle, it gets absorbed in, and it cleans up the join. So, next up, torso. Sits in like so. However, this does look to be a very tight join to begin with, so we can go with the green adhesive, since we definitely don't want extra pouring out. So I'm just going to give it a very light coating. Maybe even a little bit more than that. However, this is going to be, I'll do a teeny tiny bit of the thicker stuff just in the center, since it's going to be a load bearing point for the model. But it's just kind of getting a feel for how much is on there. She is twisted at an odd angle as well, but that's the sculpt. I'm going to get these two tight together. It's the other downside. The more you push, the more it's going to try and separate the legs. So if you want, glue the legs together, let them set solidly, and then try this to do this part. So I'm going to hold in like this, hold the 2 legs together as solidly as I can. Sorry, I realize I've done some of this off camera a little bit. My apologies. Apologies for the camera shake as well. Just trying to get it to line up everywhere. It's not perfect. I think that is as bad as good as I'm going to get. Fortunately, I think I'll zoom out 1 step. All right. So, the head, while it's sitting here, carefully clean off the sides. So this is how the head, that is how it's going to go. If we get this, pick up the face off the mat for the dry fit, you'll see what I mean. Where the face, the horns go pretty much out the back horizontal, and the face goes onto the front. So I'm going to very glue that on now, so it has time to set before I put the try to attach it to the body later on. So I'm using the green glue, well the extra thin. Very carefully. Stick it together, press it in firm. I'm going to leave it to dry. And we're going to cut out the other two arms. And there is also a small neck piece here, which we'll need to get because that needs to go on before the head, if I'm correct. Most of the time when there is something like that that's got to go on there, it needs to go on before the head is attached to the neck. That's common for things like cloaks. Then we have this, which I'm pretty sure is the front loincloth that most people leave off. But we'll dry fit and see. I'll remove the neck piece, which looks, if I'm honest, looks kind of like a face hugger from Alien from this position. All it needs is a tail. Like, yeah, you can see it, right? It's not just me. Please let it not just be me. That's everything off the sprue, so we can put it to the side. Alrighty, so first off, I'm just going to try, yep, that is exactly what that's for. That's the, oh, is it? Seems like it flows out a bit much. However, it's too small for the bum. Because this, oh, maybe it's for the bum and this is for the back. No, that wouldn't make sense either. So that's how that goes. Maybe, nope. Maybe it's an overlap like that. We'll have to see as we put it together. Either way, as I said, those two pieces look like they can be left off as sub-assemblies. So we'll put them to the side. We'll leave them to final dry fitting. So we'll dry fit this for the moment, which looks like, for once, it's actually going to go in after the head is in. So if we dry fit this, maybe I was wrong and that is a piece of flash. Oops. As always, I have the worst hands. No. She just has a super long neck. Can't be right. This is how it's sculpted. That's how it's sitting. That's very weird. It's a very, that has, It's kind of, it is weirding me out because it's exactly how it's supposed to go from the way it's moved. This is supposed to go on, maybe I'm supposed to glue this on first before I attach, like glue it onto the head. So if I attach it like this, does it look less weird? The answer is enough. It looks like that's how it goes with the, yeah. There's been a few cases with the armor sprues where they had quite long necks because of the peg system they've got, because they have a generic fits-all peg system for the armor sprues for obvious reasons, so it's fully customizable. But it did leave sometimes you would have awkwardly long awkwardly long necks. I'm guessing where they mean for you to put a cloak around or something like that. So that, or to allow the room for that. And if you're doing an armor sprue where there isn't going to be, so I'm just looking. Alright. Just trying to tell whether that's tooth or that is just a piece of rubbish, but it's a piece of flash. Okay. So very carefully. carefully remove that. It's all for mold lines on that piece. Alrighty. I'd probably normally be swearing a lot more if I'm perfectly honest, but making an effort to keep these pretty clean for YouTube, to make them as widely available as possible. But I have to say, there's been a few times with these models where I've just wanted to like throw them down and start swearing like crazy because they can be so fiddly. They've got massive hands. Alrighty. Let's see. Dry fitting again. Always dry fit, dry fit, dry fit, dry fit. So we want to see if this will go in smooth. Goes in at a sort of an angle. That's cool. So that's how that piece will go on. Drop things the mandatory 100 times before they get stuck into place. Now this piece is at an awkward angle to start with. The arm is positioned behind, and it doesn't look like it has any peg system or anything that's going to help lock it into place. So I'm going to have to go back and super clean that little joint because there's a little bit of mold line in there, and that's going to stop it sitting nicely. All right, let's try again. As I said, there's nothing to hold this into place, so you're going to have to kind of sit it in and get an idea of where it's going to be, and then glue it in and finish the final positioning. Just, be careful, take it slow. Learn from my mistakes when I make them. So, for this join, I'm feeling green glue. Press it in as firmly as possible, then let it, just leave it for a sec to stick into place, and then you can look at doing the other arm. Often though, if you've got the time, it's just best to leave it all together and let it sit there for a while so that it has time to dry before you go back and fiddle with things. But for the purpose of this video, trying to do it in a single take as I have been, I'm going to rush things a bit and do it. When I've figured out how to go back and edit these in together, then I'll probably start doing stops and starts. At the moment, these are being recorded with OBS. If you're curious, yeah. If you're curious, this is being recorded with OBS Studio, which is the same app that I use to stream, or the same program. God, I hate the word app, but I'm just so used to using it by default. See, stick in. All right. So I'm going to let that dry for a second, holding it at an angle like this. So if you're having a piece like that where it's sitting on a certain angle, moving it so that it's going to naturally be balanced to press it against the surface, it will help dry. It will help keep things, will help make your life easier, and it'll help it set with much less of a gap. All right. So now, of course, the question is, I'm going to lay this down while it finishes drying. Question is, do we need to glue this to the base before we start fiddling around with... You don't want to hold it by the arm. It's such a weird, like, this pose is... Because it's all twisted around, it's like, do I put the feet this way? Do I put it that way? So we sit it in the middle. Yeah. Alrighty, I'm going to clean this up. It's not, it hasn't been the, like, it's not a super complex model once you start putting it together, but kind of getting everything to sit in the right spot and, like, look how it should is a little bit more work. I need to just get this piece. The downside, as I said, with these small fiddly pieces, is trying to get a knife in and work with it without it slipping and cutting ourselves. Is the challenge. Got it. Alrighty. So this is the last two pieces, is the head and neck. She does kind of look like one of those African women when you do it like that, I have to admit. But then that neck piece will go in at the back. But it looks like I can attach that. So I think I'm going to attach the head. I won't glue her on until the last minute. So we're going to put a bit of plastic glue in here. And I'm going to do a double surface one, since I want these surfaces to bond pretty much instantly. Very carefully. Stand her up. Doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look like too much of a neck extension, but it does seem like... And I think at this point I will glue it to the base. So on the bottoms of the shoes, carefully sit her center of the base. See how it naturally sits first. And then I'm going to tighten up the white one. And as usual, brace the miniature against it while the final drying happens. But, which means the last piece, or the last pieces we have left is this, which I think may be the front loincloth. I'm not sure yet. None of the pictures I've found so far show her with one though, which would seem to indicate to me that maybe it is a top like little cloak that comes from the back here. So, but again, normally when you see these pictures, like when you see pictures of the model, it's showing it all from the front, which doesn't help. But even if it is, it will obscure access to things that you're going to be able to see. So even if it was sitting there, which it doesn't look like it would, it'd be hiding more, it'd be making things harder. So the last piece I'm going to attach. Although that said, I do want to make sure that you guys have a good idea of how things are going to go together. So this piece naturally confirms to her butt. Goes up like there. Oh, we don't want it to go too far though. But it's just going to be one case, it'll just slide up underneath. Which is why I'm guessing that this will then cover that. I don't know. I know it's not much help from a guide, but this has got to be a front loincloth. It's got to be. The way it's kicked up, yeah. Okay, so this is a front loincloth. Mystery solved. Oh god, mystery theater finished. When I redo the audio, I'm going to have to sound a lot more confident. I vaguely hold it up in the places I think it is. Right, so with this piece, we need to angle it how it is in the picture. And stick it in. Oh, okay. It's getting stuck with a little bit of glue residue that was left, so you can see the flat area at the back of her neck where it's going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some green glue, just the extra thin. I'm going to dab in that area, so the piece has somewhere to stick to. I'll go for the final. Oh crap. Right, so I'm gonna have to re-stick that arm. uh, that's where we cut, right? That's just where the video cuts and said, look, perfect. This is a good example though of why if you are doing this, make sure like it's not a bad thing to just do a piece, let it dry, do the next piece. Because you're gonna keep running into problems like this if you try and do everything at once, like I do. Alright. Now it's starting to look how it's supposed to look. I think we've got it. Wasn't that a fun journey? Do a bit of a twirl. Bits are where they're supposed to be. Some small gaps to fill in later. Then we've got the front of the loincloth and the cloak for the back to go on after we've finished doing the flesh parts. I don't know if we'll use that piece. So I don't think she needs a front loincloth. I like the front of the G-string there. But the back cloak, I don't even know if I'll do. I think I will do that piece though. We'll see. It's one of those, I think it's going to be one of those preference things, although it does make sense for her to have these big billowy kind of shirt sleeves and there's like no shirt or cloak. It's just like, oh no, I just wanted shirt sleeves today. Anyway, that's enough rambling. Thank you for watching. I'll give a proper twirl of the assembled miniature so you can see where all the final bits have landed up. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support as always. I hope you enjoyed this extra pinup assembly guide for this week. And yeah, I'll catch you next time for part 5 of the Pinups of Death assembly guide. See ya.